Now it's time for a segment we like to call the Monthly 10, where we do top 10 lists, and we challenge each other to make top 10 lists. And for the first challenge in the history of Purely Academic, I asked Sean Chapman to rank his top 10 anime that do not incorporate the universal anime theme of when we have friends and work together, everything is okay, or as Persona 4 the animation called it, bonds of people is the true power. So Sean, what have you come up with for this very specific, very stupid list I've asked you to make?
Yes. I struggled with this a little bit. I found that it is actually shockingly difficult to find anime that I said for my list, anime that aren't about the power of friendship is kind of how I boiled down what you asked me to do. And it was hard. And so I've mostly leaned towards, inappropriately for our October podcast, a lot of horror stories. Because, of course, horror in its various forms typically is quite cynical. And it will often kind of subvert this idea of friendship power. But I have some nice surprises along the way. I'll try to get through the list fairly quickly here. I don't want to go too long on any of these. And some of these are going to be relatively obscure. But I'll just give you a little bit about what each of these are. So this is my top 10 anime that are not about the power of friendship. Number 10 is the show Another. It is an adaptation of a horror novel. This is a very simple, not great, but totally fine horror anime. If you just want to watch a simple little TV horror anime for Halloween, it's decent. It's very much anime Final Destination. It is about a curse that haunts these people of a classroom. And it is just slowly killing people in increasingly brutal and graphic ways. And so if you like Final Destination, you want to see what is Final Destination in a high school anime, that's what Another is. So that's my number 10. My number 9 is the show Happy Sugar Life, which I know if you just hear that title sounds like that's great. But this is an ironic title. Happy Sugar Life is about a girl who is psychotic, I guess is what you would say. She's voiced by Hanazawa Kana, who is very good at playing girls that seem very nice and sweet, but are actually complete psychopaths. And the whole action of the story is about her basically kidnapping this strange little girl that she has some kind of obsession with, and she wants to create her perfect family, her happy sugar life, and she will defend that happy sugar life to the point of murdering people. She has an incredibly terrifying aunt character in that show that is scary and abusive. And it is most of the major characters die by the end of the series, which is a bit of a spoiler, but it's not that good, so I don't really recommend watching it. But it is very much not.
I'm sad you said it's not good because you were describing it. You described Kana Hanazawa. I'm like, this sounds great. I also wonder, isn't that about friendship being great? Because she bringing all these people together through murder? I'm kidding.
Oh, well, she, I guess you could, and this is maybe why it's a little bit lower, is that there's a little bit of friendship where the main character does ultimately give her life to save the weird little girl that she rescued, but she basically passes symbolically her psychosis onto the little girl. So I don't know if it's how much of that is saving that little girl and how much of it is dooming her to a life of murder. I don't know. It's a show that sounds better than it is, unfortunately.
Fair enough.
Number 8, this is what it took me a while. I had to sort of dig into some memory here because it was an infamous show at the time, but it's one that nobody has talked about in a while. It is Pupa, which is an adaptation of the horror manga. It is one of the most infamously terrible anime made of the last, I'll say, 20 years. Each episode is only 4 minutes long. They are very short. They're very bad. They are so cheaply produced. From what I understand, the horror manga itself is fine, but the anime, in how cheaply produced it is, makes it even worse because it also is a very kind of provocative show in terms of its overall themes. It is about a little a sibling pair where the younger sister is a monster, or internally she's a monster. She doesn't know she's a monster, but she craves and needs to eat human flesh. And then the older brother is also kind of a monster in the sense that he is immortal, but he's immortal in the way that Wolverine is immortal. So he's got the healing factor. And so if you've got a little girl that needs to eat human flesh to survive, and you've got an older brother who can just keep regenerating that flesh, I think you know where this is going. It is very sort of weirdly incestuous. It is most infamous for, I believe it's episode 6 is the entire episode. Again, keep in mind the episodes are only 4 minutes long, but it's an episode where the little girl is straddling her brother from the back and eating chunks out of his back in a way that is very sensual. But you have to keep in mind, this is the cheapest, lowest budget animation you have ever seen in your entire life. And so it is both hilarious and disgusting at the same time. And it's very fucked up. So Pupa, it's fucked.
That one seems like it fits. That is Studio Dean. They also did the first Fate Stay Night anime. Not a good resume there.
Yeah. Well, Studio Dean does a lot of shows.
They've done yes, they've done other ones, but like in the category of things that needed better animation and didn't get it, as you're laying out here.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Pupa, not good. Very infamous. I had not thought about that show in a long time. I had actually not originally seen it, and I watched it for this podcast because it's like 20 minutes long. And it's bad. It's very easy to. I mean, it's easy to get through in the sense that it's very short and it's kind of funny because how terrible it is. Number 7. This is a show that everyone, hopefully, listening to this podcast will know, is Mobile Suit Gundam 0083 Stardust Memory. I picked this one for the ending. Because this is the show where we have built up a relationship between the main character and the romantic lead, Nina Purpleton, and then at the very end, you get the big twist where actually she's in love with Annabelle Gatto, which, I mean, everyone's in love with Annabelle Gatto, but so much so that she betrays her new relationship with her new boyfriend and the entire government and planet that she works for and turns traitor, and the show never reconciles that idea, and it's one of the craziest, most inexplicable things I've ever seen, and I can only assume it's because some of the people involved in the production are like, bitches be crazy, and they're like incredibly misogynistic. I don't know, but what Nina Purpleton is as a character, it's so fucked, and that ain't friendship. Not in my book.
I think you are so correct about this. That is like an anti-friendship show, but I hadn't thought about it through that lens. You are so right, though. Because, like, there are darker Gundam shows, but I think, like, Victory Gundam still kind of has this theme.
Yes.
You know? So you couldn't put Victory Gundam here. The Iron-Blooded Orphans, totally about the power of friendship. They all die, but it's totally about that. 0083, you are correct. It is nihilistic.
Yes, this is very nihilistic. All right, number 6. This is maybe the most different one in this list. This is Ore Imo, or Ore no Imoto ga konna ni kawai wake ga nai, which is, if you translate the whole title, is My Little Sister Can't Be This Cute. This is a show that if you just watch season 1, it's great, and it very much is about the power of friendship. If you just watch season 1. If you watch season 2, though, it's about the power of incest. I don't even know if I need to say more than that. I would not watch the show, or if you do want to watch it, just watch season 1 and ignore the fact that there's a season 2. That is a thing where once you cross a certain line, it really does poison everything that came before it. When you just think, oh, this is like a fun show about how like siblings can be friends and kind of like siblings who have, as they've aged, they've grown distant, can refine the power of a friendship in family. The way that, I found with like my relationship with my own older brother in my life as we've gotten older and stuff like that. I was like, that's cool. What a good show. And then season 2, not so good. I'm going to move on. Number 5, my second and last Gundam show on here, and the one least about the power of friendship, is Gundam Build Divers.
Yes.
It's so not about the power of friendship. It's about the power of how just good World of Warcraft is. Man, it's just, if this stupid fucking friend girl just didn't get in the way, how easily we could just enjoy our MMO Gundam game. But no, we have our magical AI girl, and it's like she's got to fuck up our whole game, and we have to just have this whole fucking dilemma. Do we save the little girl and not play video games? Or do we sacrifice her and murder her brutally so that we can play World of Warcraft? Unfortunately, the show makes the wrong choice. They do save the girl in the end, but it's not the power of friendship. Not in my book.
Absolutely not. They are bad. It is a show about people who are bad friends, I think is one way you could say it.
All right. So now we're in the top 5 here. So my number 4, this is probably in some ways the most obscure and almost certainly the most fucked up thing I have on this list. This I had forgotten about for a while, but I had gone down a rabbit hole a few years ago when I had Googled the Ero-Guro nonsense movement in Japan that people might know. Ero being erotic, Guro being grotesque. And the nonsense meaning nonsense. This is where you combine like erotic art with like grotesque imageries of bodies being destroyed and stuff like that. It's a whole artistic subculture movement in Japan that's been there since the Meiji era. It's a whole thing. This is an example of that. One of the most infamous ones in animation, or loosely animation you could call it, which is Shoujo Tsubaki, or Midori, the girl in the freak show. This is a fucking weird ass movie. It's a adaptation of a manga by the mangaka Suehiro Maruo, who is one of like the most sort of well-known artists in the Erogudo movement, which again is just like very much, it's like underground art is kind of how you can think of it. This is very loosely animation. It's almost more like what you'd call kamishibai. It's like more or less static images, but it with voice acting over it, but it is technically an animated film. And it is about a girl who basically becomes part of a circus freak show. She is like a regular girl. She's supposed to be this sort of like innocent young little girl that like represents the idea of innocence, and she is slowly corrupted through her interaction with the freaks in the freak show. And it is full of violence, like a dog gets brutally murdered and you see its brains like jump out of its skull. There is like lots of sexual assault and sexual violence. Not something to be watched for the faint of heart. It's also not that good, but if you are curious about like underground art and stuff like that, and stuff that is designed to be very transgressive in nature, like this is an example of something like that. And it's a movie that has a certain level of infamy because for a very, very long time, it was more or less impossible to watch because it was like a privately owned, made, and distributed film by the filmmaker Hiroshi Harada, who directed, produced, and wrote the thing. And so it was something that in general for a long time you just could not really see. Now you can easily see it if you just want to find it online. It's very easy to find, which that sort of, I think, saps the film of a lot of its kind of power, is it being just something easily able to find, and then the production difficulties of it, and the relatively thin nature of the plot that is there to show it's very like sexploitation in style. It's a thing. Not something I would recommend, but if you're someone who's curious about underground art, this is a fairly infamous example of it, and is definitely not about the power of friendship. Oh, no, sirree. So that's my number 4. I think I put that number 4 just because it's kind of so weird and obscure. It feels weird to put it higher. So let's get into my top 3 here. My number 3, this is the show Blood Sea. This show is one that the ending of it is so incredibly violent, it actually made me sick to my stomach, and how casual and nihilistic the violence is a show about a girl who fights monsters that are attacking this town. But the whole point is at the end, there's this huge twist that's almost a like Truman Show-esque twist, which is that it is not a real town. It is a fake town. All the people living in that town are actors, and the girl with the special powers fighting monsters is there as like a science experiment that she does not realize is going on. She thinks this is just her regular life. And then at the end, the person running the science experiment betrays everybody, lets the weird, grotesque monsters into the town, and they kill every single person living in the town in ways that are incredibly brutal and incredibly inhumane. Like a monster that is basically like a giant open blender and just picking up scoops of people, dropping it in its open head, and blending them into bloody mush. It is so disgusting. And that's the last episode. So the bad guy doesn't even get his comeuppance. And there's like, they made a movie like 3 years later I never watched where I guess she goes and kills the actual bad guy. But it is both really gross and has no narrative payoff, which is like makes it even more gross. So I wouldn't watch it. This is something I watched on a whim years and years ago. I watched this show like 10 years ago. But it has always stayed in my mind because it is so violent and disgusting in the ending, and is so casual with the way that people die that it's nasty. It's a nasty show is what I'd say.
I thought this list was going to be funnier. I gotta be honest. This is so brutal, Sean. This is awful. Oh my god.
What did you expect? You asked
I don't know.
Every fucking anime is about the power of friendship. Even some of the darkest shit you've ever watched somehow is about the power of friendship. Fucking Neon Genesis Evangelion is about the power of friendship. I just said Victory Gundam is about the power of friendship. It's like even when it's all fucked, it's power of friendship. You gotta dig deep, my man.
I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at myself, Sean.
This is what you asked for. This is what Thomas asked for. Thomas has to watch all of these now.
Okay, that's true.
He's the one who came up with it. All right, I've got my top 2. My number 2 is Devilman more generally, but if we're talking about anime, I would say Devilman Crybaby. This is the classic Go Nagai manga that has been adapted to various anime. If you wanted to see the anime version, Devilman Crybaby from a few years ago is the one to do. It's on Netflix. It adapts relatively faithfully the manga, which I've read the manga and seen the show. And this has one of the most infamously bleak endings in the history of manga/anime. I also don't even really want to spoil it so much. But it is the direct inspiration for the ending of the end of Evangelion. It's just done much, much, much better in Devilman. But basically, I mean, one part of the ending that I think is fine to spoil is that Armageddon happens and everybody dies except for Lucifer/Satan, who's left alone and everything has been destroyed. And it's fucked, but it's very good. Devilman is good. This is a thing I would recommend, either the manga or the show or both. People should seek that out. It's very good. It's very dark and fucked up at different places and very violent, but it feels like that violence serves a bigger artistic purpose that is both provocative but very interesting. So
we might get around to it at some point if we ever do a Science Saru season and Masuki Yuasa and all that. So yeah.
Yes, yeah, because Yuasa directed it. So yes, so this is probably like most of the shows I put on this list are bad because, again, you kind of have to scrape the bottom of the barrel for something that doesn't even kind of have a little bit of the power of friendship. This is one that takes that theme and does it extremely well. Now, for my number one, Jonathan, I'm going to do something a little unusual because when I put together this list, it didn't take me too long to think of what has absolutely is number one, easily takes the cake. It's got to be number one. But it's a show that I don't know if you've watched, and I don't even know if you know that it exists. And if you don't even know that it exists, Jonathan, I don't want to take that from you because this might be a really funny Japanimation Station episode to do. So I'm going to say a phrase here, and if you know what I'm referring to, then I will talk about this show. If you don't know what this refers to, just forget about it. Just don't worry about it. People at home, if you're curious, you could look it up if you want to know what my number one is, and you will be like, yeah, that's number one. But if you don't, and I will say it's not like incredibly disgusting in the way that Blood Sea is. It's not, there's violence and stuff in it in places, but it's not like that far. It just is so not the power of friendship. And I want to do a Japanimation Station on it. So I'm going to say something, Jonathan. You just tell me if this means anything to you or not. If I say the phrase nice boat, do you know what I'm talking about?
The season of Gilmore Girls where Rory Gilmore got arrested on Logan's boat?
Yeah, that's definitely what I'm talking about. So Jonathan, just don't worry about it. That's why you got it. Gilmore Girls, that's my number one. We're just not going to think about it too much. Sometime in the future, we will all learn what nice boat is. If you at home are curious, if you at home know, you fucking know. If you at home don't know, you can, if you really want to know, you can just type nice boat anime into Google and you will see what it is. Jonathan,
okay, I won't.
Do it. Don't you fucking do it. Because we are definitely going to do this for a Japanimation Station because it will be very funny. But just trust me, it's number one.
All right, well, Sean, that's the monthly 10 for this month. What are you going to challenge me with for November?
All right, my list for you, Jonathan, I thought long and hard, but I realized, in November, near the end of the month in November, my birthday comes up. It's November 23rd. It's a good, solid birthday to have. And I just thought, as I'm getting older into my adult life, it's just kind of hard to get birthday presents for people, for like other adults, because it's just things get busy. And you're like, I don't know, get them a pair of socks or something. So I just thought it would be like really convenient if I had a list that I could just hand someone of 10 things. It'd be like, this is it. If you want to celebrate Sean Chapman, the person that really should be celebrated on this planet, pick from this list of 10 things. These are the 10 best possible, absolute best possible, no holds barred, the best possible birthday presents for the best birthday boy in the world, Sean R. Chapman.